Welcome, everyone. You are listening to The Last Dinosaur, and I'm your host, Chris Aversano. This is the podcast where we explore the evolving maritime landscape and hear from the innovators leading the charge. Today's guest is Joy Basu, CEO of Singapore-based Smart Ship Hub, a maritime digital platform that's transforming how vessel owners, operators, charterers, and marine insurers approach digitalization. Smart Ship Hub is working to replace disconnected legacy systems with a single enterprise-wide solution. By leveraging high-frequency sensor data and machine learning, SSH delivers deep operational insights and helps its users unlock efficiency gains. What makes this interesting is that Joy's team isn't just building tools, they're creating a platform where collaboration, clarity, and connections drive smart maritime decisions. Joy, welcome to the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me over here. Really appreciate that opportunity to be. Thanks.
I appreciate you coming on. I'm really interested in your journey because looking at it, one of the things I love to do on this podcast is to talk about people's journey, how they got to where they were. And you came from outside the industry. So you're not an industry insider, which is fantastic. I've always said in this show, we need more people from the outside to get away from that thinking. You need to have maritime people in your company, but a company full of only maritime people may not be the best bet. And the same is true for outside maritime. Talk a little bit about kind of how you got into Smart Ship Hub, how you got into maritime, and a little bit of your journey.
Sure, Chris. And as you put it across, right at the outset, I was told by all the customers that I approached that I'm not the guy that they feel they would like to work with. And why so? Because they say, oh, you don't understand ships. You are not a mariner. You've never sailed. How the hell do you know our set of problems? How are you going to solve problems for us? And if you bring on some platform that you say does it, we don't trust it because you are not one of us. Surprisingly, Chris, every one of those people today are our customers. I can say every one of those. And that's the journey I went through when I started off and today. And people do make mistake of thinking that I have sailed a lot. So they have to ask me, where were you sailing last and with who? So I take it as a compliment. So yeah, because of the background I came from, and I had to work a little more to understand the domain, to understand the mindset of the people and why would they not accept a solution from what the other industries have to offer. So everything that we are doing today at Smart Ship Hub nothing is new. I have to acknowledge that. Everything has been done in some other industry. It has been done in the airlines. It has been done in the road transport. It has been done in the manufacturing. Nothing that we offer today, or for that matter, anybody that offers today as a technology solution, it's not new. The world already had it. We repurposed it. We re-engineered it. And from my personal background, I have been in technology for the last 23 years. I worked in the manufacturing, in the automotive. I worked in the banking sector, worked in airports. And all the while that I worked was taking organizations from legacy to digitally smart state of affairs. And that's why the transformation, whether people call it business transformation or using technology to have the workflow transformation, that is something came in very easy for me. So it's surprising, be it so, that this whole this shipping thing came over a game of golf. I was having with one of my current customer, the managing director and CEO. We were playing, we were paired together, and that was the first project that says, why don't we do something like that? What you do for others. So that was about 3.5 years back, and since then we spent about a year putting things together. But the main reason why we are in this, and probably today we are a force to reckon with as compared to very large players, is we saw a very large unaddressed market. We saw a market where most of the people were, and still are, by the way, happy working on Excel sheets and old ERP solutions. We saw a market where we saw banks, investment boutique firms, insurance companies investing in maritime. It's happening in last about 5 years or so. And that's when we started realizing, when we spoke to some of these people, that they said, Joy, technology is going to be the key differentiator and not who has how many ships or vessels that they are chartering in, chartering out, or owning. So what kind of technology do they have How do they make it asset-light model, which has happened in every other industry? That's going to be the differentiator. And that was the moment when we realized this is something we should be able to work. And that's one of the moments where we started investing significantly into creation of the solution. So multiple conditions helps us out. We started off with nothing. Today we have more than 20 times the number of ships that we started 3 years back. We have not a single customer that dropped off. We are probably one of the top 4 in terms of total number of fleet that is managed by us. The company valuation rose 15 times. We received 2 rounds of private equity investments. We had Japan's largest company, Nakakita, participate with us as a joint go-to-market. All these put together gave us the kind of the jet fuel that we needed from the moment we started to bring us to a level where we are taken very seriously. And the reason we are in Singapore, I come from India. There is very little shipping activity over there. There are very few ship owners. But the kind of technology we built together and put it in place, we realized we need a bigger market, more appreciation. Singapore was the closest. There was no other reason for us to reach there. It was just a 5-hour flight. We reached and we realized there are thousands of companies. Everybody focused on creating value. That's how we came to Singapore. The moment we landed, we realized that we are in an ecosystem that has customers, that has the government support, that has transparency, that has shipping forums, that has the port authorities that are like promising and they are encouraging a lot of startups. That is exactly when we thought that's the best place. That sitting here, we can attempt the conventional legacy industry, bring them a platform, all the experience of working with enterprise solutions, transforming businesses to smarter and more agile businesses. The same thing is what is being done today. So from that point of view, I keep on iterating that anybody or us, we are not doing anything new. The world already had it. We just repurposed, reverse engineered, made a platform out of it, and started making people see, this is the data you always had and that's what it's giving it to you. I'm doing nothing. I'm just a medium for you to make it realize. So that's where we started off with, Chris. I mean, if you want anything to know specifically, I'll be happy to add in, but I think this gives an idea to you probably.
No, I think it's great. And before we get on, you guys really focus on kind of the performance, getting that data, the performance data off the ship. So your clients are really going to be the technical managers and the owners, right? That's how I understand that.
Sure. So when we started off, we didn't realize that who is the one who's going to pay for this digital application. Right? Nobody knew who's going to pay finally. So people were like spraying and praying. They would go on to anybody and say, hey guy, we have such and such platform. Do you think you manage the ships? Do you think we can help it manage for you? I would say, no, we don't pay for this. Don't worry. It's all good. We don't want it. The charter pays for it. Then we go to the charter. They say, okay, our terms are such that, the owner pays for that. And somebody says, this particular thing, maybe the insurance company is the right candidate. So we did have that moment to begin with where we were not sure who's the real audience. Over a period of time, we realized, okay, for these services, the charterer makes sense. They pay and they save some money. For these digital services, the owners don't mind spending money because they know the status of their asset and, the health of that asset. XYZ services, the technical managers want to pay. So that's where we learned. That's when we realized, how do you bring it in different modules, which the different ecosystem starts paying for. And that's what made it not a tool, but a platform, wherein there were multiple people deriving intelligence from the same source. And we could then make it a siloed, but connected, of course. And that's how we started off.
So I would imagine one of your biggest challenges, and I think you said the E word, which is Excel. And I ran into that as a product manager. Long story short, we rolled out this great product internally for a fairly prominent ship owner. They loved it. Everything was smooth. A couple of years later, they decided to build their own platform, which good luck to them. And they were a great client. I actually said to my client, thank you so much. We learned a lot. It was getting probably 25% of their team onto the platform, which they never wanted to go because they had a either Google sheet or an Excel sheet that they shared amongst themselves, and then other iterations outside of their office, and they were able to do what they needed to do. And that's who I was competing against. And it was mind-boggling, right? And I'm sure you're doing the same thing. Talk about a little bit some of the other challenges you have when you talk to these ship owners or charters or whoever the module within the platform is focusing on. What are some of the challenges that you have to get them to transfer over? And how do you help them overcome that? Because I think that's one of the really biggest things that we have. Our problem in the maritime space is not a technology issue. It's a change management issue. That's all that this is. It's people, I've always done it this way. I make money this way. Why do I have to spend more money? Now, there's a lot of external forces, whether it's compliance with certain cybersecurity things that are coming up, or, obviously the IMO and decarbonization, which digitalization will aid in getting towards those goals. But talk a little bit about some of the challenges, because I think that this is a fascinating part of what you're doing.
Sure. So once again, since we didn't come from the maritime background, we learned it ourselves that most of the companies would only spend in the must-have category, which is regulatory, right, which is compliance, which is safety, and which has been asked by somebody else to do. They don't intend to do it themselves until and unless the realization comes that they must. So these are the must-have categories. And the second one is, which is all about business impact categories, where you make a small tweak in your processes, bring in a technology, bring in a platform or a tool, and it starts showing improvement. That's the level of maturity that people have yet to traverse. The third one is good to have category, where people are talking about predictive diagnostics. They're talking about condition monitoring. They're talking about AI, which is helping them see things that has not yet happened based on what has happened in past. So when we started putting these three boxes very clearly, we realized most of the customers came in the first category, the must-have. Now, in the must-have, we have seen significant shift from people saying, give me something that I can just submit that data, that report, and I can get done with it. I don't care how many people are looking into it, seeing it. So that's where we started off from. And today, I can say 100% of our customers, and that was a major shift in last 2 years. 100% of the customers are in the either business impact category or the good to have category, which means they have matured from must have to these two boxes. But how and what kind of issues we face? First and foremost, all the organizations where digitalization or new technology or adoption or reverse engineering succeeds is only where the decisions are top down. So it is the CXOs or the board that takes a decision about adoption of a technology and making it available for others and having an outcome and measurable outcome defined. That's what my personal experience I started seeing. The top down part is what we don't see it everywhere. People can leave a lot of decisions to people down the order, middle order. And for some reasons, these are strategic in nature. Like I said, condition monitoring. If you manage your ships with condition-based maintenance or predictive maintenance, it shows significant outcome after 2 to 3 quarters. People in the middle order do not have that kind of visualization that they can see that it will bring it. People who are senior enough, I think they have been exposed to a lot of such situations and they can see through, right?
Sorry. And I also think also think just jumping in here, but I think this is a very important kind of mind shift set overall with companies, right? In other words, I think that a lot of times the managers who would implement this, line manager, maybe even a step up, they're, kind of judged almost quarter by quarter, right? Yeah. Whereas an organization, and this you could get into a whole thing of mind shifts, the mind shifts a change of organizations of only looking quarter to quarter because of investors, because of you said you had PE funds and all these sort of people. Oh, what'd you do for me lately? Right? What was the last quarter? What was the quarter next? And delivering a platform like this may take 2 quarters, right? Or 3 quarters to actually realize by the time you deploy it and you have to get it onto a ship and it has to get, however the process is, even though it may not be long, but touching all the touch points and then getting the data back and reacting to the data and then seeing the results. doesn't come overnight, right? I mean, very few systems do. And from the time that you make the investment. So I think that that's also a big shift that you say, this is something we're going to look on year or every 3 or 4 quarters, not quarter by quarter. I think that's a huge shift.
So you can actually segregate the globe based on the usage pattern. You go to one side of the globe, which is Japan, you will actually see zero digitalization except for 5 companies. It's so surprising, right? Japan, one of the largest ship owning region, except for the K-Line, NYK, MOL, ENO, you will find nowhere any adoption. Their thing works, by the way. Even the oldest of the stuff that they work with, it works. It's just that the kind of leakages they are going through, it will take them a whole lot of time to come up and start adopting, which is what has started happening in the last 1 year. So that's Japan. On the other hand, if you see West Europe, the adoption is one of the fastest and the largest as compared to all the fleet sizes or the technical managers. Or you take a certain part of North America. Surprisingly, in Asia, it is Singapore which is driving the digitalization wave. And there's a whole lot of work that is happening in China because of the port infrastructure and a lot of new builds happening. And, China on the AI side is having phenomenal bit of work that's happening. Everything in between are big silos. A lot of people, there are practical reasons. A lot of people have their vessels, the vessel owners, on a long-term charter. The vessels are given for 2 years, 3 years. Their money is guaranteed. They do not want to spend money on something which they are getting without spending, which means the charterer is now thinking about spending. That's like one category. The other category, the spot charterers or not so long time trading patterns that they have, they are looking at making their ships smarter in order to make the vessels more visible and to be able to trade in saying, you know what, I will give you transparency, I will give you best practices, I will give you data, I will give you a lot of information which you're not getting today. So that's like another category. The third category, and I can give you with some examples, better not to quote names, but they are all my customers. Some of them, I'm saying, world's top 4 ship management companies. Everybody started making their own applications. Everybody of them.
Yep.
Even after
and
2
class,
years.
Class societies as well. Everybody. Right? Now you have all these layers. Class.
Yeah.
Everybody. Yeah.
Only to realize after having spent millions and not having reached where they intended to, let's work with partners. Now, is it the first time? No, we have seen this in every industry. And the best, like Mittal Steels, one of the largest steel industries, when they started bringing their own ERP solutions, they spent 4 years, could do nothing and spent a lot of money. So
I believe that.
Agile systems, people who specialize in something that's their bread and butter, they breathe in and breathe out that particular piece morning till evening. Those are the people who started bringing in these innovations,
Yeah.
By the time these people got into a feature, the world moved 2 years ahead and started saying, I don't need those 5 people because the AI is doing that bit. Would you like to consider that? And they were still testing the whole feature.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about machine learning, AI, high frequency sensor data. Tell us a little bit through what you're learning about some of the real world impacts that is being seen, whether it's your clients or whether it's their experiences with other type of AI and machine learning, but some of the feedback that you're getting in terms of, how this is playing out over, like we said, over those 2, 3, 4 quarters after implementation. I'd love to hear what's going on there and what the view is with regards to that. Sure.
So I think most of our customers, and we are glad that it is like that, have come to realize that each of their assets some of their assets are maybe $150 million plus asset size, plus the cargo, another amount. So when people use CCTV cameras for their home and offices, and they were even negotiating to have AI cameras for the ship, the only counter argument was, why do you have these 10 cameras in your office? What are you securing? Some PCs, some network? Is that it? You have $150 million worth of one asset. You have 50 of them. Don't you want to know the situational awareness part. And these days it's automated. So one has to create reasons and justifications and examples and cite more instances for one simple point to be drilled down for them. That's how it started. And that is when one could say, look here, you can see your main engine. You can hear it as well. You are seeing the smoke coming out, which is little ash gray, not white. And the vessel just came out of the dry dock. This shouldn't be the case. And it's going at 87 RPM, such and such consumption. The weather seems to be okay. This is getting analyzed by the system now. The AI is telling there is something wrong. And there was nobody who waited to be called next day or sent a noon report, such and such thing got observed. This is one of the biggest evidence we are able to present to people. The second biggest thing we are doing is, for example, today we were having this call with Tradewinds, and one of my customers, they said, in last 2 months, we averted about 2 incidents, which could have been major downtime for the vessel. It would have also caused embarrassment for the organization. And of course, that's a lost revenue opportunity of hire, right? And the system already predicted, and it was progressive condition. That's like a no-brainer. When you are looking into progressive condition, when we go for our blood diagnostics and the pathology lab gives us some kind of an indicator, those are the kind of indicators now machine learning is giving to us, right? So that's like pure value-added aspect. There are a lot of other areas which are no-brainers. For example, the customer or the owner or the manager, they already know how much of fuel they're going to need. They're going from the port of Tokyo down to Singapore and from there to New Jersey. Given the 10 times the vessel did in last 1 year, given the weather patterns and the trading volume and the cargo thing, they actually know exactly how to assess the quantum. So they also know the carbon footprint because they know how much of fuel. They know the carbon footprint. They are predicting the amount of fuel that they're going to have the carbon footprint, and they are deciding how should my vessel manage during this next 9 days, because the weather patterns are known, the older ones and the current one. All kind of sea patterns and the weather trade is known. The cargo, the ballast and the laden condition is known. The vessel's behavior 2 years down the line from the dry dock is known. There are so many information that got fed into it. So this is exactly where machine learning is helping. And the data coming in from the machinery is as good as what we see avionics in the aircrafts, except that there is no name for it.
Right. So the question that I have, we are seeing right now is a lot of times that data gets locked on the ships because of connectivity and everything else. So the whole connectivity issue has to be advancing what you're doing and others like you are doing, and what ship owners and managers and charters, wherever they're fitting on the ecosystem of your platform. That has to be something that is also a big shift as well. Just that connectivity, whether it's Starlink or other people are starting to put satellites in the air. Talk a little bit about that, because that's a huge plus for what you're trying to do.
Absolutely. In fact, that is pivoting our business, and I'm sure for many others, and business models are changing significantly. So imagine when I talked about avionics, and what is it? It's done is it connected the aircraft to the ground control tower. It connected the tower issuing instructions and conditions back to the aircraft, and the aircraft is connected back to another aircraft mid-air, right? So there are 3-level connectivity already happening. And that has given us systems where both in terms of cargo or passenger airline trade, where the routes are shared, because airlines, they have code share, right? So everybody don't fly to every location because they already have partnerships. So the route is shared, the capacity is shared, the maintenance schedule is shared, the procurement is shared. When you start sharing so much of information, you're creating economies of scale. And that is exactly what is happening in the vessels. And that is like one of the projects we are now significantly investing on is, I can just give you an example. If there were about 18 vessels that was to leave from Japan, these are bulkers, down to South Africa and up to the Europe, if they were going, the algorithm goes through the process and decides instead of 18, just send 13 vessels. Remaining 5, can you just ask them to wait for some more time? So this is one of the trade velocity part that is working out, because it is pulling in information from different sources, making these 18 vessels share information with each other. They all know if I'm going only 70%, 65%, 80% laden, I'm losing out on every percent that is not laden on the vessel and still going the same route. And these 18 vessels are also sharing information on their maintenance regime. They are actually planning to procure things based on condition of the machinery. So this is like condition-based procurement. And they do not procure ahead of time, which is happening today, which is any procurement happens, which is like by number of running hours. Oh, it's 20,000 running hours, now it's time to procure. It's 8,000 running hours, now it's time to procure. No, instead, it is procured when the condition says so. So you can either procure ahead of time, by then you are saving the vessel from any downtime, or you can defer it, you're saving a lot of money. These kind of connected ecosystems are coming up, and you have seen Galileo and Amadeus in airlines, which connects all aircrafts, airports, and you can go to Expedia, Booking.com, and so on and so forth. The same thing is happening in maritime. Connected ships, shared data, information with multiple people, centralized information lying at one location. People are generating this to create trade settlements with the charterers, to have shared routes, shared weather updates. The cargo is also taken care of. And that is how the entire trade is shifting. And finally, this was made possible with the Starlink coming in. The amount of bandwidth that got on the vessel, the use cases started shifting.
Right.
So from those 2 kbps 2 years back, now we are 100 mbps. The number of use cases are at least 11. Each use case is a revenue stream for company.
Yeah. And it's also more of a way for people to make, things more efficient and potentially, as you say, a lot more with preventative maintenance and other types of maintenance that you can maybe get ahead of an embarrassing issue, like you mentioned. Talking about predictive maintenance and all these other types of platforms, one of the things that I've noticed, and I'm sure a lot of other people have, is that when you hear about the use within our industry, you generally hear it, and I'm talking about in the news or on articles or webinars, it's usually the bigger companies, and it doesn't matter what sector you're in. You're talking about containers, tankers, so on. I want to come back to another little point here, or another point, is that you kind of mentioned that some of the innovation is taking place with the big Japanese ship owners, and you mentioned their name, but you do have a long tail of a lot of ship owners that have not yet innovated. And sometimes those small and medium businesses get overlooked, but they make up a large tail of our business. How are they finding the value in the digital change and investment? And how do you approach them? Because I would imagine that, yes, you could try to get one or two of the big companies, but these small, medium businesses, I think are equally important for companies like yours and others to go after, because there's such a large amount of volume, and they do make up, a big part of the fleet.
Absolutely, Chris. And we all know about Maritime. The smaller companies actually would be comprising of close to 60% of the market in terms of the trade volume that they do. Considering their economic and financial interests when they come up with a new technology or a digital platform or some kind of disruptive work, the only consideration that they state right at the outset is what is the dollar value. They don't care about how well they will be looked in the industry because they have adopted technology. They don't care how well they will be written about or talked about. All they care is that 1%, 2%, 3% in the bottom line. And in any case, if the top line could be improved in their business. So that's like putting a very tough milestone for any technology platform to make it happen. Having said that, we have worked with a whole lot of small and mid-sized companies. About 30% plus of the ships that we digitally manage right now comes from this bracket. of the customers. They demand a lot. They expect a lot back in returns. And that keeps the technology providers, that keeps the engineers, that keeps the marine engineers or the data scientists at our end always on the tenterhooks. And having said that, an example that I want to take is a lot of these companies, take for an example, a charterer dealing with a smaller vessel owner. The trade settlements often would take more than 30 days, 45 days. Once they started using a digital platform, the trade settlements were happening in a day or max 2. Because the uniform source of truth, the data, the intelligence, the dashboards are kind of giving you all situational awareness. They're giving you the weather feeds, they're giving you the performance, they're giving you exact condition that might be anomalous in nature. And as a result, people honor that data points because it is evidence-based. Second thing is all the mid and small size companies would prefer always to have regulatory compliance always on their side. And they realize if they can save 2%, 5% in terms of efforts or human efforts, at times, your companies can go up to more than 15% in terms of human efforts. And in some organizations, we have quantified more than 4 man-months of time saving, for example, emissions reporting or the noon report get analyzed. And when this all moves to digital platform, we are talking about for a company with a ship size of 30 to 36 saving about 4 man-months. That's significant. So when a smaller size company that could be 15 ships and we are looking at 2.5 to 3 man-months, when we are very sure of the outcome, we try to define it and we have a yardstick of measurement. Then it becomes measurable performance, right? And what data can do for them, what kind of time it can save for them, what kind of turnaround time. And once they see this turnaround time paying off well, I have seen personally in all the companies we work for, they start with 2 ships, move on to 5 ships, and then they say, can we have all the 10 ships? Because that is kind of helping us. So this is where we see the trend. This is where we see they are slow on uptake, but they're very fast on, moving on from 2 ships to 5 to the 10, if they're a 10 ship company or 20 to 20. But that's the trend in 100% of the cases that we are seeing. So the trick there is define the outcome statement, make it easy for them to understand. Don't price it so high that it becomes a sales friction. Make the benefit position right at the outset spelled out, write it down, which a lot of people don't do. And once we start, I think there's a data-driven evidence for them on why digital platforms are helpful in terms of their priorities.
It's really interesting because it's a similar type I've seen in my previous roles as product manager. 2 main points is going back to the recent point that you made is when I worked for a company, Q88, we had a voyage management system and it was the exact same thing. And we had many clients that would say, well, I like your platform, but let's start with 3 ships on the platform. And, and we wrote the contract out that you could add a certain number of ships as you expand the fleet, something that is very, very common that I've seen. And it's interesting to hear it. Then the other piece is this small and medium sized business being, a high amount of attention. And I think that kind of cuts both ways. You look at it in the negative light, say, oh, they're always calling me. They're always doing this. But on the positive light, and this is something I always saw, is that every phone call you had, this guy is giving us a hard time, but they gave us 4 good ideas. So it's an interesting point of view because you can say as much as they're difficult to deal with, right? Because like you said, they're smaller companies. They don't have as much leeway with extra people. Their time is closer to value to actual money because, you're dealing with a smaller, whether it's shipbroker shop or in your case, a ship owner. But generally what happens is they give that feedback. They know exactly what they want. They said, well, yeah, this is good, but it could be better. There was a lot of examples where we took what they wanted in general and was able to present it in a way that was relatively quick to go to market and that didn't impact other clients' workflows because we were a SaaS company, so everybody had the same product and they just configured it to the way they want. They have these really great breakthrough ideas that can help platforms. It's just a matter of listening and getting over the fact that you just got maybe yelled at a little bit as a provider. Go, okay, there's a few good nuggets in here, and here's what we're going to take away from that.
Absolutely. The whole world is seeing how the ship management structure is changing, how the ownership of ships pattern is changing, right? You in Japan, you see, barring the top 5 companies, rest all could be in the range of the larger numbers. Out of the 1,500, 5,000 ships, the larger numbers would be 4 ships, 10 ships, 15 ships kind of company. And they have pretty much defined that they're not going to add more ships to their kitty, right? So when that kind of ownership structure starts becoming the norm, or the ship management processes starts disrupting, where it is superintendent to ships mapped kind of a process to more the data being handled by the system to the ship's kind of processes. In fact, just before this call, I'm coming from a customer which is extremely high on digital maturity. It's a European customer based in Singapore with significant number of ships that they manage, and most of the ships made in Japanese yards. That's like everything under the sun. They're kind of integrating in a single data platform. The vibration monitoring, the MANC on the smart ships information that we're getting, everything under a single platform, with the hope that they will ensure that there are no disparate data that floats around in the organization. There will be a single dashboard. The ship management, the owners and the charterers get it from there. The performance teams get it from there. That's like one side of the maturity. The other side, which I met just day before yesterday, is another company that said the 80s way of running ship where they were using those cards and punch cards was very effective. How do you deal with such huge range where someone is still relishing the card-based system that all of us know is not to be talked when you talk about digitalization together in the same breath? But that's the reality. And we will continue to have those conditions faced. And the only way to do it is create a lot of case studies, like I mentioned earlier. So all these case studies and success stories are kind of giving them a data-driven evidence of what's happening. Unless we do that, it will be a hearsay. It will be people talking based on some conferences that they attend or articles that they read, and a whole lot of myth about AI and ML people will talk about without actually having to use it. And we start using these case studies to tell them, do you want these 5 case studies also become a use case in your organization? And that's exactly where we also started working with, a consulting organization, because they get consulting requirements from others. A very large American company, maybe number 1 or number 2 in the world in avionics.
Right.
They have recognized that they would want to bring in similar connected capability in the ships.
Okay. You see, and it's just,
where the market is moving.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's only taken, how long have people been doing this for, on the digital side? It's only taken 20, 30 years.
Yes. And just imagine, we will see it happening right before our eyes, that these companies who come with avionics kind or avionics grade connected systems and data-driven, intelligence, bringing the whole stack into maritime, their ability to process data, their ability to work across fleet, across the ports and yards already exists. They just make the data sense enough. And then we are looking at a new economy. And that's where we are moving.
Yeah. And I think it's going to take, these type of investments. And I think it's going to be, and maybe I'm more moderated in my approach. I think it's going to be a lot of different ways to invest and types of investment to really, get us close to where aviation is, whether it's from, and I think it's 2-part, right? People from outside the industry, like yourself, and like people from the avionics side really taking an interest. But I also think it's going to have to be tempered with folks who there's a bunch of investment on the VC side, TMV, Motion Ventures, the Doc, these other ones who are specializing in maritime, because it may be the greatest idea, but if you can't explain it and have people who are in shipping, and I've said this before and I said this earlier, part of the company, then I think that leads to the potential of, let's say, maybe not failure, but not as much success as if you have somebody who can speak the lingo and understand the investment thesis and understand what the client pain points are and all those sort of things. It's going to be interesting to see how somebody who has had success in an industry other than maritime in a very parallel way come into the maritime space and can they repeat that success? And will their success outside the industry actually be a deterrent? In other words, well, I did this there, and these are just boats, and who cares, right? So it depends on the attitude of what they take, because we've seen that happen before. And one of the things, so you bring these folks who have the punch cards and they operating in the 1980s and maybe still listening to Madonna or whatever. When you talk to them, and is this just a matter of going into those companies and laying out the case like you did with measurable KPIs and we're going to deliver this? Or is there something else when you talk to these companies to get them unstuck from their legacy systems? Competing with Excel is a very real thing. Now, it may not seem like it's because it's technology based that it's that old, but looking at what you could do beyond that is certainly a thing that's hard to do for people who are very happy with their legacy systems.
So it's very difficult because most of these small and mid-sized companies do not have the technology leadership. They do not have the need which has come up on their own. They cannot be influenced at the same velocity that you can influence some others who have a board function, who have investors, who are a larger set of players. A lot of these smaller companies could be family driven, and some of these people in the leadership have been planted. And some of them are there for the last 20 years or maybe 15 years. And they have seen through the different cycle that maritime goes through. Tankers made money. After some time, the containers made money. The bulkers didn't. After some time, bulkers made money. That was always taken in as a default scenario. And why would that happen? Because information and data wouldn't exist at that point of time. Right now, the money is not when you hoard information. That is what happens when you are in a disconnected economy. Money is with the brokers and agents who hoard information, who can have their margins play around. And that is exactly what the world has taught us, that when you have connected systems with a lot of information and data coming in, and smart sensors and IoT is making it possible, there is a democratization of data happening. And that is something to be understood. If someone does not understand, it has to be demonstrated. And if you cannot demonstrate, the easiest way is to bring a lot of case studies, put it in front of them and create success stories that they can reference to. And that content is missing in maritime. I think the classification societies are doing their best in bringing a lot of success stories, because somewhere for the emissions control that all the top 3 or 4 classification societies are doing, they are integrating with people like us. They are creating customer success story. They are going on the press and announcing that. And finally, they are hoping people, when they read, they realize that it's not a noon report based intelligence anymore. You have a demonstrated kind of an evidence. So this is something we are attempting more and more. So most of our meetings are all about showcasing. It's not about selling. It's at least educating them that these are the 5 things possible. Did you ever give it a thought that, how to calculate sludge while doing your emissions reporting? They say, no, this is not possible. Okay, let's look at this. This is how it is.
Right.
That's how exact example you take and show right in front of them, and then they are processing it. I think that's
right. Yeah. It's funny. I had a very similar example when I was go back to my previous role, and I'd go into a shipbroking shop and I would go through the motions. Well, I'd point to a pain point and I say, well, here's how to solve it. And okay. And it wasn't like the whiz bang, all the cool stuff. It was just literally a toggle that we had, and I knew how to sell that toggle, I guess, but it wasn't even selling. It was like, this is how I would use it when I was a broker. You can do what you want. And sometimes it just takes understanding their pain point, laying it out in a clear way on how they would actually use it in real life. Well, this was a fantastic chat, and I thank you for coming on, Joy. And I really love the fact that the story that you have of coming from outside the industry, starting at a golf game. So it sounds like the genesis of your company and business and working together with industry has really paid off as you continue to grow and kind of get insights. And I think it's fantastic. And thank you again for coming on. This was a wonderful chat. And then also thank you for working with us here. Joy's in Singapore. So sometimes having these conversations is not the easiest in terms of time of day for you. So thank you very much again.